Welcome back to the podcast. I'm the host, Sean Boyce. I'd like to welcome my guest to the show today, Byron Patrick, who is the VP of Customer and Operations at Fieldguide. Hello, Byron. How are you? And welcome to the show.
I'm great, Sean. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, super excited to dive into the topics that we got prepared. But first, if you wouldn't mind, so our audience can learn more about you, can you share more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm happy to. So, as you mentioned, I'm currently the VP of Customer and Operations at Fieldguide. Fieldguide is a audit platform for cyber risk audits, and I've been here since March. Prior to that, I have, it's amazing what you accumulate in 2 decades of, the accounting profession. But, I started my career as a public accountant. CPA with a small firm in Annapolis, Maryland. I was doing all things tax, audit, bookkeeping, you name it, which was some awesome experience. While there, actually, the owner of the firm was also the chair of the Maryland Association of CPAs. So he actually introduced me very early on to kind of the benefits of being a volunteer within the profession with, state and national associations. So he kind of sparked that fire for me in getting involved. So through the years, I've been heavily involved in MACPA, AICPA, and many other professional organizations within the accounting profession. But back to kind of my career path, I was there for about 5 years. And while I was there, this was, Y2K era. It turned out I learned that I had this affinity to technology. I hadn't gone to school for technology. I'd never really been deep into computers. And I discovered that I actually had this aptitude that was kind of untapped. And I left there and went to a regional firm where, after a year of being an auditor, was actually asked to lead the IT department at that firm. And which was a really interesting moment in my career, because it became this decision point of, I worked really damn hard to get this CPA license, and I'm going to be an auditor. That's my trajectory. And all of a sudden, I was presented with this other opportunity that was like this magnet that just kept pulling me in. Yep. And I debated it, and I was like, you know what? This is probably a really cool opportunity to marry what seems to be this thing that's calling me, and with the profession that at that point I had already really felt vested in the accounting profession. And I went ahead and took the leap. So I became the IT director of that firm, which, during that time I learned a lot about technology in the accounting profession, how to use it efficiently. I mean, this is when the cloud became a thing and virtualization became a thing. And it was this really cool period of time where technology was really becoming to be embraced within the profession. And a couple of years after that, I ended up actually starting my own company that basically provided IT services for accounting firms, and spent almost a decade being basically an outsourced IT department for accounting firms. We were doing, desktop hosting, and, in my opinion, providing a level of technology for small accounting firms that they just couldn't get otherwise. And, it really enabled a lot of firms to have great success in keeping staff that moved all around the world, and, taking advantage of these things that today in the cloud, we just take for granted as normal. But in 2008, 2010, it was really, fairly innovative. So did that for about a decade. Ultimately, my business partner and I kind of parted ways. And he bought me out. And, from there, I kind of did something kind of similar for about 2 years, but then ultimately ended up at BotKeeper, where I was heavily involved in building out the post-sales organization, a bunch of different efforts and teams within BotKeeper, basically from the period we raised our Series A through to our Series C. So over the course of 3 years, saw an amazing amount of scale and growth there, which was exciting. It kind of continued my path of really having impact for firms, especially smaller to mid-sized firms, which is where I've always really, tried to level the playing field for those types of organizations. And, I enjoyed that ride, had a lot of fun, a lot of great success, learned a lot, and then, ultimately left there to join Fieldguide. So it's been quite a run.
Super interesting background. And it's extensive as well, too. You've seen so much in terms of technology in the accounting industry. And the marrying of that like deep level expertise and subject matter expertise with your accounting background, with both now the tremendous amount of technical experience that you have as well, too, specifically in industry, makes for a real unique combination of skills that are in seriously high demand in the accounting industry right now. So I have to imagine demand for your services has probably been pretty high across the industry. But yeah, I have about 1 million questions, as you might imagine. The first of which was not necessarily related to technology, but something that I saw, which I thought was super cool, and how I know you live this lifestyle, because when I saw you at the Engage conference this year, I saw you have a pretty wild tattoo. So can you tell our listeners more about that tattoo and what it looks like? Obviously, we're going to have a video version of this episode, but a lot of people are probably listening to this episode audio wise. So do your best to describe for them in visual detail what it is. And I'd love to hear the story about how it came to be.
Yeah, no doubt. It's amazing, what $120 will do for you. I knew at the time I was doing it that it would certainly make an impression. I don't think I ever could have anticipated the impression that it has made. But to provide a little background, as I mentioned, Carter Heim, the managing partner of that first firm I started with, introduced me to the Maryland Association of CPAs. That was very early on when Tom Hood had just become CEO of the MACPA. And, that kind of launched a real passion for me with my volunteering at the association. And through the course of, that time, I was involved with establishing a young professionals network at the MACPA, and worked with all these professionals. And ultimately it culminated in 2013 when I was named chair of the Maryland Association of CPAs. I was at the time the second youngest chair of the association, and it was really an awesome honor to be able to do that. And I wanted to really do something to memorialize what that meant for me. I figured what better way to memorialize something like that than with a tattoo. So awesome. What I designed was basically a Superman diamond, inspired by actually a cover I think the AICPA had created for laptops, and it was like a Superman diamond and basically highlighting CPAs as superheroes. And so I was like, let's start with the diamond, throw the CPA in it. And then for anybody who knows Maryland people, we have this weird obsession with our flag. And so I dropped the Maryland flag into the background, and, that introduced the CPA awesome. Super Maryland CPA tattoo. And, ultimately I put it right on my forearm, on my dominant hand. So when I shake hands with people, they'll see it. And, it has made an impression on a lot of people. I do wear it with pride. I love this profession. I love the impact that this profession has. And, wearing it on my body is, something that I think really represents that passion that I do have for what we do as CPAs.
Definitely, man. It's a really cool story, and it's definitely, obviously, as I mentioned, something that I noticed seemingly kind of right away. And uh, you can tell that I can tell that the passion's there when we talk about this stuff, because it's something that you continue to pursue and then be a champion of for others as well too. With that incredible background that you have in industry, and now a significant amount of tech experience added to that as well also. So
Appreciate
really
that.
helping to push the industry forward, and we need more people like it, really do. So it's super admirable. And for anybody who wants to see the tattoo, we have it on the video. So go to YouTube and check that version if you want to check it out, because it's a pretty cool tattoo. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
And that's kind of one of the topics we wanted to dive into a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
I personally, and judgment free zone here, but again, feel free to judge. I like accounting, like a lot. I'm not a CPA, at least not at the moment. I've considered getting my CPA, but I've done a lot of accounting. I've studied a lot of accounting. I even teach like accounting 101 courses to like minority-led business owners and entry-level entrepreneurs and stuff like that, which is super really cool. And I love doing it. Yeah. And a lot of that is accounting tech and, how to use the cloud tools and whatnot, which is a lot of fun. It's enjoyable at the same time. And, we talk about this before as well, too, because there can be a lot of sentiment out there, either about the industry or about the work or culture or whatever it is, that can give people a kind of a bad impression, or sometimes turns negative. Right. And we're not talking about, constructive criticism type feedback is not something that we want to hear. That's always something we want to hear. Right. But we also want to, avoid from just beating something up to beat it up, so to speak, because in some of the communities, especially the online ones that I've consumed a lot of information in, some of that stuff can get, pretty intense. And in some instances, I think pretty unfair in terms of, beating up kind of the profession of the industry itself. So I wanted to get your impression on that, because I know it's something that we talked about, and I wanted to kind of tell the other side of that story, because, in terms of everything that I've studied and learned, I haven't regretted a single instance of any of the experience that I've gained, which is nowhere near as extensive as yours in terms of the accounting background and knowledge that I have. It has helped me pretty much every step of the way, and it's provided so many additional opportunities. And you are the perfect example for like how you can take that so much further. So anyway, you got a lot of experience here. I kind of wanted to get your impression on this, and like maybe where it comes from, where it's going, and inspire people a little bit more than, hopefully turning some of these communities around a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to, and I'm going to start it off by saying, by no means am I like, there is definitely a population of elitists, I would say, in the CPA, licensed CPA world, where, there's like this element of CPA versus non-CPA. Not me at all. In fact, my future wife is a non-CPA accountant. So cool. The language of accounting, the impact of accounting, I have all the respect in the world for everybody who, participates in this space and has the impact that we can have. And I think for me, that's where I get really excited about being part of this profession, because if you look at business, if you look at personal impact, we are involved in nearly all the conversations, providing guidance, translating the information, helping to make intelligent decisions. And, unfortunately, what has happened is there's a lot of organizations that I think have lost sight of the human element of what we do. And they've really become these factories, and where you don't get to celebrate the impact that you're having. You don't get to, really embrace the aspects of being an accountant, because you're just grabbing the next thing and cranking, and it's wearing people out. And you see that. You look on Reddit, you look on Twitter, you look in all of these places, and people are tired, they're burned out. And it's, creating this sentiment of, don't become an accountant, don't take the accounting path. And I think it's really unfortunate because I would say, hands down, my network of friends and people I respect are just do not reflect that sentiment, that angst that a lot of people are feeling. And there's just such great opportunity in this profession. And part of the irony is, I think, a lot of people get stuck on that path, frankly, that I was on initially of like, I got an accounting degree, I'm going to do taxes, I'm going to do audit, and that is the path. And they haven't been met with those opportunities to leverage that knowledge and experience, but use it in other ways. And I would say, I have, had those opportunities present themselves. I have embraced those opportunities, and I am thankful for the fact that I started out with this foundation of accounting, and I've been able to, do more than just, crank tax returns. And, I really want people to reflect on, what they've done, what they've learned, what they've accomplished, and take it to the next thing. Don't continue to, sit in your office miserable. Don't sit there, like your office does not reflect all of the opportunity that exists. And it's really easy to live in these communities. And you mentioned it earlier on that we were going to talk about like the echo chambers, but it's like, you find 100 other people out of the, I don't even know what the number is, 600,000 or probably 1.5 million accountants in the entire profession. And there's like 200 of them on Reddit that are all just, crying about the profession. And it's not the profession. It just happens to be where you're at that moment within the profession.
Great point.
And I just, the idea of turning people off of a path in accounting, which I think has just been one of the most satisfying and rewarding paths I could have taken, is unfortunate to me, because there's, we should be proud of the impact that we have. And if you sit back and you look at it and you think about the clients you've helped or the employees that you've helped, and it's, I don't know. I have a hard time getting stuck in that echo chamber of just dissatisfaction with the accounting profession as a whole.
Super well put, and couldn't agree more. I mean, in terms of like background for myself, undergrad, I studied engineering, and one of the things they were constantly telling you was, it's probably very similar to accounting, right? This is going to be tough, right? This is going to be hard, but if you get through it, you can pretty much go wherever you'd like from there, right? And you've always got that base to fall back on. And I feel the same way about accounting, which is why I gravitated towards that as well too. So even while I was studying engineering, I was taking finance and accounting courses at the same time. And that marriage ended up being a great fit for me, similar to, it sounds like your background, tech and accounting and stuff like that. So in order, the inspirational kind of element to making sure people feel proud about what they've accomplished and what they've done. The fact that, to your point, which I think was a great one, where you are isn't necessarily where you're always going to be, right? If you're in a situation that isn't working for you for one reason or another, or if we're speaking to the partner level and they're getting complaints or feedback that their team is unhappy for one reason, there's things they can do to change that. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more as well too for folks in terms of how accounting can be such a great foundation. And there are a number of different ways you can kind of go when you have that as a foundation. Like, again, your career trajectory is a perfect example. You've done so much, and you started with that as a foundation and continue to leverage it at every step of the way. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about that as well too. And then maybe if you're talking to like the partners at firms, what can these partners at firms that might be having some of these challenges or struggles, what can they do to kind of like provide relief or re-inspire their team?
Yeah, great topics. I would say the first aspect of it is, I throughout my career, as you said, it's been pretty diverse. I've been in a lot of different capacities, different roles. And one thing that has always come back in those roles is, my ability to create a budget, my ability to understand, to map decisions back to the financial impact of those decisions. And more than a handful of times have I heard, I am so glad you are a CPA because this conversation is so much easier. And
awesome.
It is awesome. And so, for those of us who happen to have that foundation, I can tell you that if you choose to take maybe a non-traditional path, you are still going to leverage that knowledge and expertise that you have amassed as an accountant. And, to your point, engineering and accounting and bringing that together, that's pretty rad. I can certainly see the advantages in almost any respect of having that accounting background. And, we see it every day when we talk to business owners, just how little they understand the financial implications of decisions and how to make good financial decisions. And, just think if you could take that superpower and apply it to other things, there's just more than enough opportunity for all of us to do that. And for the firm owners who I think, may be struggling to inspire their teams or really attract the right talent or keep people in their firm, I would recommend they really take some time to talk to their team and find out where their passions lie and see if there's opportunities to leverage that. I can tell you, I'm so grateful for Carter Heim early in my career, recognizing kind of that aptitude that I had for technology. And he put me in opportunities to work with firms to build very early, tech platforms to help these businesses. And even though it wasn't, a balance sheet, and even though it wasn't, an audit, he actually found ways to leverage my talents beyond just the accounting that kept me engaged, kept me, really inspired, and also created opportunity for those clients that we were serving in ways that they didn't even expect an accountant could. And, so I would say, talk to your staff, talk to your team, find out what inspires them, what gets them excited, and see if there's ways that you can put them in a position to deploy those talents beyond just the day-to-day books. And keep in mind, there's a whole lot of people out there who they love doing audits. They love doing taxes. And you know what? Put them in a position to do those things. But for those who might be, not so excited about sitting down and doing a tax return, they're crazy talented people with likely a lot of potential to do great things. So why not try to find a way to maintain that talent? Maybe it's redirecting that energy to internal efforts, which is what the second firm that I worked for did. I'll never forget, I sat down at lunch for my 1-year review, and the managing partner of that firm, Alvin Katz, he said, we think you could be an okay auditor, but we think you could be a great IT department leader. And, it was kind of this, it was, almost backhanded in a way, but at the end of the day, I walked away going, you know what, he's right. He's totally right. I think we get really stuck in just, doing exactly what we did, early in our career, or in that path that maybe the educators, frankly, have told us is the only path. And I really think we need to look outside. And there's so many firms out there that we see, frankly doing that, creating really inspirational organizations to be a part of. And, I can tell you, if you are a firm owner and you're struggling with this stuff, you better get it together, because frankly, the magnets are going to be those firms who are figuring out how to, keep people inspired in this profession.
Super well said. There are two things I'd probably dive into deeper, and then a question I'll ask you as a next step in this conversation, in terms of you've made a great case for what the firm owner can do in terms of the thing that I related to, and a lot of the content that I produce, similar to the value prop that I'm pursuing with how I help firms in terms of boosting profitability, and getting around some of those hiring challenges, is all about basically finding waste and then getting that time back and reinvesting it in a more productive way. That can really be an element where it also serves as a win for your team, to keep them out of what I refer to as the quote unquote boring busy work, where you just got you've got these sharp people with these unbelievable skills, and they want to solve big, complex problems that maybe you haven't quite figured out yet. But if you do, it's a game changer for your firm. And they're just doing repetitive, data entry tasks or something like that, or something that can be automated. You invest a little bit into automating some of that stuff away from them, and you free them up to use their creative problem solving skills to really just move the needle in a big way. That can be a really impactful thing for your firm, and it can really boost the engagement, the kind of the value that they're getting out of the role that they're fulfilling at the firm as well too. So in terms of trying to engage people or motivate them, hardly a better way. That's also mutually beneficial for both your firm and your team. So I'm taking that away as a point, essentially, that you've provided a case for as well too. And then the other thing I'd love to hear you talk about for a moment too, as we kind of wrap up this episode, is on, in particular, the accounting subreddit. I see a lot of the stuff that starts with some type of hey, this isn't going well. I think there's a larger pattern that I see for the most part, where one of the more common associations they make, where it's I went down the route of accounting, but my friend went down the route of tech. And here's all the reasons why the grass is greener, basically, which, is not perfect, but they get excited about the possibilities, or it's crazy busy season, maybe a different level of pay or something like that. And so they try to think through, would it make sense for me to make that form of a transition to an extent? And since you've done so very successfully, I'd love to hear you probably, if they're listening to this episode, I imagine that's probably the next question they have for you is, I'm in the traditional accounting track. I got that background, which sounds largely like where you started as well too, but I'm definitely interested in further exploring tech. So I'd be curious to know what kind of advice you would have for them in terms of preparing them for that, if it's something they want to do, and what that path might look like for them.
Yeah. And to be honest, this is a conversation I have frequently. When I was a BotKeeper, I hired a lot of CPAs and CPA candidates to, join, not in accounting capacity. And so this was, a conversation that I had on a regular basis, and I still have people asking about today. My first piece of advice is, I would not run away from accounting. If your motivation is a technology path where I'm running away to chase this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I would highly encourage you to really think hard about what your motivations are. If that pot of gold happens to inspire you and excite you, and you see opportunity there, by all means. I mean, that's run to something, not away from something. Because if the organization that you are in just happens to be a bad place for you for whatever reason, I can tell you, I have not talked to an accounting firm that is not looking for talent right now. So if you're in a bad place, in a bad organization, you don't hate accounting, you just happen to hate the place that you work today, man, put your resume on Twitter. I'm telling you,
seriously,
It's crazy. I don't know a single accountant that is unemployed. And I don't know a single firm that's not looking for good talent. So that's number one. Like, don't just get stuck. You can make a change. And number two is, if you do have a passion out there that you want to explore, by all means, like, take the knowledge and experience you have and pursue that passion and like bring it with you. Like, that is one of your superpowers when you come into that role. Sure, I might not have a lot of knowledge or experience as a product manager for a tech solution, but guess what? I have a hell of a lot of experience with working with a million different companies who have these different pains. I've helped them navigate those pains, and I can figure out being a product manager. And I can tell you, in many capacities, I've seen CPAs or accountants become product managers in technology companies. And if that's something that excites you and inspires you, go for it, take it, and just bring with you the accounting. Don't just run away from it.
Such great advice. Inspirational. Doesn't surprise me one bit. Thank you, Byron. And thank you for being here. If you recorded an episode, super valuable information. Absolutely. I'll definitely have you back to do more as well, as everything continues to evolve, as we've seen it do rather aggressively and probably accelerating. So plenty more to talk about in the future. But before we let you go, I've got two questions for you before we wrap up the episode. The first is, are there any resources in particular that you'd point any listeners to where they can go to learn more about anything we talked about here, or anything else that you think is valuable?
I would say, if you are in public, the AICPA PCPS committee or practice area has an amazing amount of resources that I think are incredibly underutilized. And frankly, if you look at the cost, absolute steal to be involved with. Asterisk, I was on the executive committee for a period of time, so I really have a personal vested interest there. But I would highly encourage people to explore the resources there. Number two, I would say just your network. Look out there, and LinkedIn, Twitter, all of these places, podcasts like yours and others. I find so much inspiration just consuming that, all of the different podcasts out there where you can learn about, what other people are doing and find people who are being successful, taking potentially unique paths.
Some great resources. And we'll link to what you shared as well also. And that networking one is so powerful, man. That's one I didn't really learn the true power of networking until I was very late in my career, but I'm glad I eventually did.
No doubt.
Because it is so powerful. So well said. We'll link to those. Thank you for that. And then the last question I have for you is, who should reach out to you and how can they get in touch?
Yeah. So first, LinkedIn. It's easy to find me. I just ask that you drop a note there. There's just too much spam, too many recruiters, to be honest. So drop me a note for why you want to connect. The Twitter, Byron_CPA. You'll find me there. And you can also email me at Byron, that's BYRON, at fieldguide.io. And, if you're going to email me at Fieldguide, I would say, these are people who are in the audit space looking for primarily the cyber risks. So SOC, PCI, HIPAA, high trust, these types of engagements. And frankly, you're just tired of shitty software. So shoot me a note and I'd love to connect.
Well said. And I'm a big proponent of that last point as well. Also, my background and experience and user experience at this point nowadays with as soon as I use software, which creates a pleasant and delight experience, that cat's out of the bag, man. I can't go back. So if I'm using something that doesn't give me the same level, you got to update. You need to fix that. So well said. Great advice. Again, thank you for being here. We'll link to everything in the show notes for all of our listeners who are going to go kind of learn more and just find out or have a direct link to anything Byron shared. And I just want to thank you again for being here and sharing your knowledge and experience with myself and our audience.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Accounting Automation. I hope you found it valuable. I help accounting firms scale their profit exponentially without needing to hire any additional accountants. So if your firm is in growth mode and can't keep up, I'd love to talk to you more about how I can empower your firm to do more with less through automation and technology. To learn more, visit my website, nextstep.io, or email me, Sean@nextstep.io. That's Sean, SEAN, at nextstep, NXTSTEP.io.